Are you ready for some Mustang madness? Well, welcome to the Horsepower Corral. Today on Horsepower TV, we'll upgrade our Pro Touring Pony suspension with upper and lower control arms, plus some tunable coilover shocks. We'll install some new disc brakes and show you a cool way to bleed your brakes. In our race of the week, the past is new again as we tag along with some new nostalgic drag racers of the 21st century. So hang on for Horsepower TV. Hey, welcome to the Horsepower Shop, which today we've turned into the Mustang Ranch. Now, later you'll see some real racing ponies. We got a show horse with this S-Code 67 Fastback GT, and the one we'll be spinning some wrenches on, my 65 Pro Touring project.
Yeah, now in case you missed it, we've already done quite a bit of work to this thing. In fact, we've already added a rack and pinion conversion kit from Total Control Products, a Be Cool cooling system upgrade, and a new Hurst shifter for the T5 tranny.
Well, today we're going to swap that stock front suspension for a coilover conversion that we also got from Total Control. Our kit includes upper and lower control arms, complete with new ball joints, a pair of new strut rods, and these Alden aluminum coilovers.
Now, the Mustang suspension, like that of most OEs, has been compromised for good ride quality. Unfortunately, the rubber bushings up here on the strut rod and on the lower control arm compress and deflect under hard braking. Plus, the upper control arm allows for some positive camber gain, which means that the top of the tire leans out during cornering, and of course that makes the car understeer. Now, I'm going to get started by removing the front brakes, followed by the shock and upper mount. Then with a jack under the lower control arm, heat the coils until they collapse to take the tension off. Next, the spindle can be removed. Then you can disconnect the sway bar and remove the strut rod and lower control arm. Finally, take out the upper control arm.
Our new upper control arm shaft mounts solidly to the shock tower, about an inch below the stock location in what's known as the Shelby location. Now, there's a template included in the kit that shows you where to drill holes for that. However, seems like the previous owner had the same thing in mind, so we'll just clean this area to give us a smooth mounting surface. Then it helps to have a friend in high places when you bolt up this upper control arm. Got those washers and nuts ready?
Here we go. Well, now we're ready for the upper shock mount. It just drops in from the top and replaces the old one perfectly. Oh, and it's held in place with these 3 grade 8 bolts.
Okay, I'm going to put a nut on that bolt closest to the engine first, okay?
All right.
There we go. Is the nut on top got a hold of it yet?
Hey, the upper nut's got the upper hand here, buddy.
Oh, here we go.
The lower control arm and the strut rod are installed as an assembly. Just make sure that you use the new hardware included in the kit when you install them. The retaining bolt on the lower control arm is torqued to 75 foot-pounds. There we go. And then we can go ahead and tighten up the bolt that holds the front strut rod in place. Now we can install the spindle, and we'll start by bolting it to the lower control arm. Now, the kit also includes this spacer that goes right on top of the spindle like that, and then the nut. Now we'll just slip it into the upper control arm. And finally, reconnect the sway bar using new end links of the proper length.
Hey, before we bolt in these coilovers, I want to show you some features that allow us to tune the suspension. The knobs at either end adjust the compression and rebound to give us proper valving, whether we're drag racing, road racing, or just cruising on the streets. And we can change the ride height by turning this adjuster nut for more or less preload. Man, the alignment guys ought to love this setup. What do you think?
You bet. Now, those turnbuckles are going to make caster and camber adjustments a real snap. Well, that just about takes care of it for our suspension upgrades. But before we can bolt on our new master cylinder and brakes, hey, we're going to take one first. But we'll be right back after a word from our sponsors.
Later on, our race of the week goes nostalgia at Rising Sun, Maryland. And you asked for it, more Horsepower TV bloopers.
For the latest news on Horsepower TV, check us out online at horsepowertv.com.
Welcome back to the shop and our Pro Touring Pony project. Well, now that we've got the suspension handled, hey, we're ready to bolt on some new brakes. The Mustang's original Kelsey Hayes brakes used a cast iron 4-piston caliper and an 11-inch rotor. Now, that wasn't too bad, but brakes have come a long way since then. Now, our new system comes from John's Mustangs and Classics and uses an 11 3/4-inch diameter, 820 thousandths across. Plus, the hat section and the hub are both milled from billet aluminum.
Well, so are our 4-piston CNC calipers we're using. Now, inside them, the pads are a high-friction carbon metallic material, real easy on the rotors. Now, we're going to change out that single reservoir master cylinder in the Mustang for this trick aluminum dual reservoir piece that also comes with the kit.
There we go. Well, I've just bolted the caliper mount to the spindle, and I've already packed the new bearings with grease and mounted them in the hub, so I guess we're ready to put the rotor on the spindle now. Then the calipers with pads are bolted to the mounts. And the braided stainless steel lines connect the caliper to the original lines.
Before we drop in our new master cylinder, we need to install these residual pressure valves. They prevent the brakes from dragging by letting the pressure bleed off after the brakes have been applied. Now, since we have a disc drum combination now, we have 2 valve ratings, 2 psi for the front disc, 10 psi for the rear drums. Now, we also had to bend up some new brake lines to connect our new master cylinder to the old brake lines. But first things first, we need to get the old master cylinder out.
Hey, I'm way ahead of you, partner. But I thought you might want to take a look at the differences between the two. Now, here's something pretty cool. Since we're using a dual master cylinder, we can actually do away with the proportioning valve since each master is sized properly for the system it operates. The master cylinder is attached to the firewall using the stock mounting locations. Now all we have to do is tighten up the brake lines and hook up the push rod to the brake pedal.
Yeah, it looks full. Now, we got something else from John's Mustangs that'll make life a little easier for us. It's a bleeder cap. With this valve stem here, we can pressurize the system and make a quick and easy job out of bleeding the brakes. Just screws on in place of the original cap and comes right off when we're finished bleeding.
We've pressurized the master cylinder with air from an air tank. Now, we like to drain our fluid into an old bottle just to keep from making a mess. All we have to do now is open the bleeder screw and let it bleed until the bubbles stop and the fluid runs clear.
Make sure to keep the reservoir full during the bleeding process. Then when you're finished, go ahead and top off the reservoir with more brake fluid.
To get the most out of our brake and suspension improvements and look good at the same time, we decided to go with this Halibran 5-spoke wheel mounting BF Goodrich G-Force radials. Now, it's a classic 5-spoke design that's been fully polished, and they measure 16 by 8 inches with a 4.5-inch backspace. Now, that's the maximum size and offset for early Mustangs.
Tires have been maxed out too. After some careful measuring, we decided we could stuff a 225/50 up front, 245/50 out back. Now, we chose the KDWS version of the G-Force for its all-weather tread design. After all, this is a pro touring car. It's going to see all kinds of weather and road conditions. Well, what do you think about my Mustang now?
Hey man, I gotta tell you, you're sitting tall in the saddle now. Now tell you what, you're really gonna notice the difference next time you put the spurs to it or have to rein it in.
That's right. Well, Mustangs are not only fine for pro touring, they're great to race. And we'll show you some of the quickest quarter horses in the country when we come back.
Horsepower TV's Race of the Week is brought to you by Edelbrock, the leader in automotive performance for nearly 75 years.
Hi, welcome back to the show and to Rising Sun, Maryland. We're about to kick off another NSCA shootout at an historic track where some of the pioneers of the sport laid down their first numbers and launched a nostalgic tradition.
Anybody was anybody in super stock or AFX racing was at Cecil County one time in their life.
Fred Henderson is back at his old stomping grounds, where in the 60s, superstock drag racers waged what was called the War of the Manufacturers, at a time when winning on the weekends would sell cars while setting records.
They would actually scream and holler at each other, and we would pack a racetrack. We would
Yeah.
literally pack a racetrack. We were then the pro stock cars of today.
Well, after 30 some odd years, Fred's back into racing, and so are the monumental muscle cars of those glory days. In fact, thanks to the NSCA's Nostalgia Superstock classes, many of the classic drag cars and their drivers are enjoying a revved-up revival.
And it's rare that you find a sport where old cars are still competitive and still appreciated. And this is one venue where you can find that. And I think people think that's special.
Sitting behind the wheel of this car, looking out over the hood is just like going back in time for me. It's like driving an old friend.
Nostalgia Superstock brings back classic Iron Warriors like this 64 Thunderbolt, one of only 100 made. Each made with three purposes in mind: to go fast, go straight, and to win.
It was the new, hottest, greatest thing going, and we've been Ford people, you know, our whole lives at that age and up till today, obviously. And it was the thing to have then. Get around those Plymouths.
Nostalgia Superstock cars run on a 10-second index, and while most of the drivers are old-timers who raced back in the glory days, well, the old class has attracted a handful of youngsters, like Stephanie Domino, who drives a 66 Impala with a big block and a turbo 400.
It is wonderful. I absolutely love doing it. And as I do it more and more, I'm noticing a lot more things, and it's great. I love driving down the track. As many chances as I can get, I'm going to go down.
Nostalgia racing not only bridges the generation gap, it brings a family atmosphere to weekend competition. The pits are full of cookouts and bench racing, and while everyone wants to win, every racer wants to help the other guy compete.
Always more fun when you win. But you know, you're going to want to help somebody get on the track. Nobody wants to win with a bye. We all want to race each other.
Meanwhile, O-Reliable here runs in a class called Pro Nostalgia, and it's heads up. By the way, this 409 was once driven by the founder of the NSCA, who wanted to keep this nostalgic racing tradition alive. This annual event was named after the late Jim Sellers, who made nostalgia racing a fixture of NSCA racing, and who drove this fabulous 62 409 to a national championship.
I've worked for him for 30 years, and I've inherited it. So it's really a special thing for me to keep it going.
Pro Nostalgia cars have a few modern modifications like aluminum heads that make them run even faster than they did back in their prime.
When they leave the ground with the front wheels in the air and you're looking at the sky, it is a thrill. I think that's why we all do it.
Tony DePillo's Honkin' Hemi is one of several Mopars in the class that came out of the box in the 60s ready to race.
We built them just for drag racing, straight quarter mile. There was no warranties on them at all. They built them as a factory drag car only. This is a pro nostalgia car, so we're able to do some modifications to it. It's got ported heads and a nostalgic tunnel ram.
A new hybrid heads-up class is called Nostalgia Pro Street. Old cars that can be built to handle all the power one can put on 10.5-inch tires. This weekend, Bruce Paulos made history, breaking into the sevens and winning the finals in a car once owned by his best friend, Richie Wyman.
Two special people up there looking down on us. Richie Wyman, the guy who used to own this car, I'm racing in his memory. Jim Sellers, his memorial. It just feels good. It's unbelievable.
The Nostalgia Superstock winner was Bob Bunton, who ran a nearly perfect 10:06 on the 10-second index.
In the honor of the old Chrysler Corporation, we'll just keep plugging away as long as guys my age, you know, are still kicking. This is what we're going to have.
Finally, the winning Pro Nostalgia racer was Jim Trettel, whose GTO ran a 941 at 144 miles an hour.
This is my first win in this class. I've been running it for about 5 years. And to win it at the Jim Sellers Memorial, just couldn't ask for a better script.
And who could ask for a better way to celebrate the new glory days of nostalgia drag racing? Hi, welcome back. I know what you're thinking. Those guys are getting ready to bear down and bolt together another killer engine, right?
Wrong. You asked for it, so now you're going to get it. Here's more of the best of the worst from Horsepower TV.
Here's what happens when you get a goofy case of the giggles.
Good job. You know, that body kit really works well with the new stance here, but hey, it still needs a little something.
Oh, I know what you're thinking, a little Van Gogh. Well, I got yeah, just some tickle I can't stop. He's funny, ain't he? He's real funny.
The manual calls for a 15 thousandths preload on these carrier bearings. Now, that's so that as the bearings wear, your backlash doesn't come out as... Hey, great job, partner.
Thank you very much.
Well, now... Hey, great job, partner.
Well, thanks.
Hey, great job, partner.
Well, thanks.
Now, we're ready for the...
Thank you very much. How about that? Like that better? Minor malfunctions can create a blooper or two. Our hardwood body comes with power windows, but since we want to keep... What the? Mark that one. Well, for example, this 34 Chevy sedan delivery has a high-tech temperament. Well, this 34 Chevy sedan delivery has a definite high-tech temperament. Son of a bitch. I did. Oh, damn.
Need them up, Ronnie. Hey, man, get any in there?
I got a little in there.
Installing that cat-eye grill shell is just about as easy, but first, we need to remove this corner running lamp. Dang. Installing that cat-eye grill is just about as easy. Oops. Man, it's real easy.
Tongue twisters turn into tumultuous takes. Pulleys and exhaust just cost a little under $1,200.
Hey, that's a whole lot of giddy up for the buck in my book.
Easy for him to say.
Hey, welcome back to the shop and our Pro Touring Project Pro Touring Pony Project. Welcome back to the shop and our Pro Touring Pony Project. Welcome back to the shop and our Pro Touring Pony Project. I forgot the rest of it. I was so stunned I got that out correctly.
Oh, man.
Hey, man, that wasn't that funny.
Why?
Well, it was a little one-sided, I think.
Well, you said you wanted more exposure on TV.
Well, hey, I'll tell you what, stay tuned for hot parts, hopefully without any mistakes.
And now Hot Parts, brought to you by CarParts.com. Everything for your car, truck, van, or SUV.
Hey, we've really come through in a clutch for you 5.0 Mustang guys. Actually, what we've got here is an adjustable clutch cable kit from Hayes. It replaces your weak, non-adjustable factory setup. Includes this heavy-duty cable, a billet aluminum quadrant, and all the hardware you need to install it. Now you can adjust your clutch to suit your own driving style. You'll just have to adjust your budget to pony up about $110.
Here's something that'll look cool in your pony. It's a new tack and gauge setup from Autometer with a carbon fiber face. Now they're trimmed with an aluminum anodized bezel and pointer for that true high-tech look. Plus you can buy them either as a set or individually with either electrical or mechanical configurations. So now you can keep track of things under the hood and look cool for $50 and up.
I sure love the way these wheels look on my Mustang. And to keep them looking that way, Eagle One has a wheel cleaner called A to Z. It works on all wheels. You just spray it on, let it set, and hose it off.
Hey, pretty easy stuff, but don't forget about your tires. Now, you'll want to use their wet tire shine to keep them looking as good as the wheels. You just spray it on the applicator, wipe it on, and hey, that's it.
All right, well, that's it for Hot Parts. But here's a look at next week's Horsepower TV. It's Operation Honda Hop Up as we bolt on a supercharger and turn this little sport compact into a pocket rocket before testing the power gains on our dyno jet. And we'll hit a local track to meet some warriors in the war of the imports.
I could have a Chevy or a Ford, but here I've managed to put a Volkswagen together and run with the Chevy and Ford.
And remember, high performance fun is what this show is all about.
For information about the products used in today's show and more, check us out online at horsepowertv.com. Horsepower TV is an RTM production.